in today's video we're going to be taking apart and completely rebuilding this customer's pair of 3343 Blacksmith boots by Red Wing in copper, rough and tough. So he's asked for the full-length studded sole and heel in green with a real leather heel stack. He's also asked for new flat welts in antique brown. So let's get started. When these boots came in, the upper leather was notably soft and supple, combined with a large amount of separation between the welts and the sole itself. So the Iron Ranger doesn't have a midsole. That welt is stitched directly to the outsole. That had started to separate. Although the stitches were still holding everything together, there was no longer much of a glue bond between the welt and the sole. That's not the reason that we're changing the welts. The customer asked to have new welts for an aesthetic reason, but that separation combined with how soft and supple the leather was on the upper suggested that these had been oiled fairly regularly. So copper, rough and tough leather takes oil really well, and it doesn't darken down as much as some of the other leathers would if you excessively oiled them, because it is a leather with a lot of pull-up, so areas would go dark and some areas would go light. If you use a waxy based product, this leather would go very, very dark. That excessive use of oil, or that heavy use of oil on the uppers, and could very well have been on the welts as well, which caused that separation, also caused the gemming on these to separate to a larger degree than I would expect to see. So I am changing the gemming out completely. Rather than trying to glue down a oil saturated piece of canvas, I'm just going to swap it out for a new piece. Normally I would take the entire footbed out of the boot, but on a 270 degree welted boot, the back portion is all held together with nails. Those nails are clinch nails, which means that the tips are turned over and into the leather. If you try and pull those out, they'll usually tear a small hole, and the more often that you were to do that, the more you would be tearing at the footbed. So if possible, leave that in there, which is what I've done, so you can change that gemming without having to completely remove the footbed from the shoe. I've been asked a couple of times now why it is that I wrap that shank inside canvas or inside fabric. So what normally causes squeaks inside, well, on anything would be a polished surface rubbing against something else. So the shanks themselves are effectively a polished metal surface. The other thing with a metal surface is it's not very permeable, so glue doesn't soak into it, it sits on top of it. So again, if you tried to just glue it in place, there's a good chance that the glue would fail, and then you would have a polished metal surface that isn't stuck to the leather surface, so they could rub together. By wrapping them entirely in canvas, that forms a very porous, absorbent pocket that this is all sat inside of, which would stop anything being able to rub against those shiny surfaces of the shank. Here's everything on this pair of 3343 Blacksmith boots from Red Wing. They are in copper rough and tough leather, which always cleans up fantastically well. They have had the Dainite Studded full-length rubber sole with stacked leather heel. They have had new antique welts, and they have also had green stitching. You may have noticed that I did not stitch the actual sole onto the boot. So I've stitched through the welt and the midsole, but not through the outsole itself. There is a whole bunch of reasons for that one, but essentially it boils down to that's quite a lot of material to stitch through. It is 13 millimeters, and my machines, both of them, have got a maximum stitch capacity of 14 millimeters. Pushing a machine to its absolute maximum on a boot that has had new welts, because welt stitching matters, would be madness. So instead of stitching that outsole on there, I have just stitched the midsole and then gone with glue only on the outsole. There is nothing wrong with glue only on that outsole. It is not going anywhere. The other advantage to having a outsole that is glued onto a midsole is that you can change that outsole without disturbing the welt stitching. So this particular pair of boots, I've put new welts on there and the welt stitching is perfect. You can keep that perfect stitching now through a second resole. So once you've worn this sole out, you can just take the old sole off and fit a new one without having to disturb the welt stitching. I do recommend only doing that the once, and after that you should take the boot apart and replace the cork and check to make sure everything inside is okay. As always, I will include a link in the description below that will take you to our website, where you will find this exact resole package along with a whole bunch of others for you to have a look through. And I will also include a discount code in the description below, which will get you 10% off of all resoles ordered through the website. Okay, see you in the next one.